Deep within the Earth exists a vast expanse of water that is said to hold more than our entire oceans. Now, it's not just sitting there sloshing around as some extra deep sea area with extra deep sea anglerfish, because if that was the case, I really don't want to live on this planet anymore. No, this water is bound up in rocks and small crevices, making it entirely impossible for something as hideous and over the top as an anglerfish to exist within, so we can all breathe a collective sigh of relief that it would most definitely be pulverized into a fine fish paste if that was the case. There is justice in the world after all. Instead, this area of the planet is said to hold more life also than what can be actually found on the surface of this world. While it's all theory and politics now, according to a well-known sergeant, if it turns out to be completely true, which we are pretty sure it is based on testing parameters being met, then very likely there is some form of life down there which are probably going to be single-celled that potentially we will have never come across prior. So why am I running on this long tangent? Because A, this is Roanoke Gaming, and 2, as a group of allegedly teens, possibly college students, definitely 1980s 30-year-olds, celebrate the end of the summer in late October because they have completely missed the reality of the situation, head out to a remote lake to swim because that's 100% the move when it starts getting colder. They then come across something that has never been identified and is a complete unknown to humanity. It would begin stalking the college students, heavy emphasis on the air quotations that you can't see me doing, as one by one they would get picked off. And the way they would go isn't too pretty also. So what is this creature? How does it dissolve the human body so quickly, and where did it come from? Let's discuss that in today's episode over Stephen King's short story, The Raft. If you've watched this channel for more than 12 minutes, you'll know I am typically interested in charitable things to get involved with, mainly because I've only got about 35 more years in this rock before my joints explode, so I may as well do charity while I can. One such charitable thing that we should all look to is protecting the environment, because there are roughly 7 grams of microplastics in your brain by the time you hit 40. Man-made horrors beyond my comprehension aside, this month is Raid's 6th birthday, and to celebrate, they want to get back to the planet. I've been playing Raid for a few years now, and I'd say it actually is pretty cool that they intend to clean up specifically the cause that I am requesting them to through this integration. For every player that downloads Raid and plays until level 20, Raid will donate 1 impact point to cleaning up ocean plastic, and since it's Raid's birthday, they will double the amount of points at the end of the month. So if 50 players hit level 20, Raid will donate 100 impact points. All you have to do is use my link or scan the QR code and play to level 20. In a month, I will update you on the impact of the campaign. If you've never downloaded Raid before, click my link or scan the QR code, download the game, and reach level 20, and then make your contribution to the environment. For a fast and easy way to start Raid, Raid is actually giving out tons of bonuses to new players during its 6th anniversary celebration. You will immediately get a huge anniversary starter pack worth $60 with epic Zargala and other useful starting items. After downloading with my link, use a special anniversary promo code Supreme6 to get a legendary champion, Supreme Gaelic. It's the perfect match to Zargala. There are actually a couple, and their names are very interesting. If that's not enough, use promo code Monkey King to get a legendary champion, Sun Wukong. But again, you can only use one promo code in 24 hours. Get the 4th limited edition champion, legendary Alice the Wanderer, simply by logging into Raid for 7 days. These champions are available after downloading, again, only via my custom link or QR only. If you go directly to the app stores or use the link to download, you won't get these packages that Raid's team has given me. So make sure to download the link, use promo code ENDGAME, come find me under the name Roanoke, and join my clan Croatoan. Alright, let's get back to it. But before moving on, I want to thank you guys for watching. Without you, I am totally screwed. I have a membership thing, and I'll start live streaming on this channel pretty soon with it. The reason is it separates basically the live streams from the algorithm so that it doesn't screw up my main content to do so. If you want to check that out, dope. If not, don't sweat it. Check out Roanoke Tales for cryptids and true crime stuff. I'm streaming on Twitch under Roanoke Games. Keep an eye out for the Discord where we watch movies and then end up here. Links for everything in the description. We kick off our stories with it being animated. Whoa, 80s and tubular, bro. Also, there's this dude who's animated. Like, he's the narrator, obviously. I get it, like, different time. But he keeps calling everyone kitties. Gross. Anyway, so a group of teens are passing the devil's lettuce back and forth. It's almost Halloween, and they're there to celebrate the end of summer. Get in one more swim. Fairly certain the end of summer was a month prior in September 21st to be exact, but then again, it's the ganj and it slows reaction time, so it's all beginning to make sense now. The key is to actually go out during syllabus week, when nothing is due and the days don't matter. The Raft has been closed since Labor Day, and that's when they let out the man-eating blob thing to keep it clean until the following year. As they drive their 1978 Camaro, it's nothing but getting elevated and coughing in the back seat. Also, this keeps happening, but in honor of that one guy who said, "We get it, you like cars, stop talking about them," brother, this is my channel. The 1978 Camaro, while not my personal favorite amongst Chevy's options, after all the 67 Impala does exist, would come with several engine sizes of varying horsepower. The 256 cylinder with 105 horsepower would barely move the thing, basically it's just a cruiser, but you did get better gas mileage, although the lower tune-up costs and the fact that it was counterweighted meant that the 7-main bearing crankshaft did allow for a deceptive amount of power, and it was fairly smooth. These engine sizes went all the way through the 305 V8 with 145 horsepower up to the 350, which was the absolute staple of Chevy engines, which would crank out 170 horsepower in the standard Camaro and tuned up to 185 horsepower in the Z28. Also, fun fact, the LS is designed around the 350 because of how stable of a build it is, delivering reliable power and it's long lasting. I actually have an 80 series Land Cruiser that's rebadged to the LX450, which is hilarious. And I'm honest to God stuck between either the LS3 or the 5.7 liter Tundra engine to throw in there. Just remember, if you complain about me talking about cars, I'm simply going to talk about cars more. Anyways, so now that that dude's gone, let's continue on. Before that though, nice Camaro. Rachel declines the offer to get absolutely blazed, as then they wonder if they should even get into the lake in the first place, as allegedly the lake is almost ready to freeze. So funnily enough, in the actual short story, this is supposed to be a lake in Pennsylvania, which is why it's so cold. But it looks like based on the rocks and the coloring of the environment, we're in the Southwest, which would still likely be warm. I mean, I know it does get cold and snow out there. I have no idea though why they changed the location so drastically and thought that I wouldn't nitpick that like 40 years in the future when YouTube was around and making a living off the internet really wasn't even a thought. You fools walked right into it. A classic blunder. But they can't believe that they are going swimming when it's like, again, it's supposed to be cold, and I can't believe they're going swimming either. I would tell my friends pound sand, I'm not jumping in. But also, I do want to point out, it really doesn't look that cold. Everything's still lush, so I don't know what the deal is, which is saying something for a desert. Arriving at the lake, it's evidently beautiful and extremely quiet. Everyone then bails out while quarterback over here is going full European. Not needing to see any of that, the women then ask if they're actually going to swim out to the raft. Obviously, Rachel's more apprehensive as the water is 45 degrees, maybe 50 degrees if you're lucky. Absolutely not. That can easily trigger a drowning or a heart attack. Jumping in, they say it's not so bad once you're in. And that's a lie because it just straight up gets worse, brother. I've been in water like that. It's like as soon as you stop moving, you get cold again. So you may be asking actually, what are the physiological processes happening behind the scenes that when you jump in the cold water like that, it becomes a problem? Well, it's actually a meshing of two autonomous reactions that you have no control over that cause most of the drownings. Let's say that you're young and spry and jump into 45-degree water. As soon as your body recognizes that you are in cold water, that can induce something known as cold water shock. This being detected by the sensory neurons reports that everything just got really cold really fast. As a result, the sympathetic nervous system now gets involved. When the sympathetic nervous system responds, this induces physiological changes such as triggering increased heart rate, breathing rate, and it'll actually begin constricting blood vessels in order to conserve heat, which sounds like a great plan, but the problem to highlight here is that the sudden increase in heart rate and breathing rate is a bit of a problem. As your heart rate increases, your body is trying to prime itself with oxygen in order to deal with the task at hand, which is going to be you swimming. Now, normally, this isn't too much of an issue, but oh wait, here comes the parasympathetic nervous system with the chair. Typically, when you jump into water, you fully jump into water and then become submerged. And this triggers what is known as a mammalian diving reflex. When this information comes into play, your body realizes that you're underwater. So in order not to drown, your heart rate will begin to slow and blood flow is prioritized to the vital organs instead of the limbs, and you will naturally try to hold your breath. This is typically when water gets like splashed into your face and nose area. So here you have two autonomic functions fighting for top dog on how you're actually supposed to behave. And this is why when you jump into cold water, you do that weird gasp thing that seems like your body is trying to bring in air, but you also don't want to take in a full breath, as the other half of your body doesn't want to breathe in water. When above the water, it's not too bad, like let's say you're in waist deep water. However, due to the conflicting information between the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system, basically telling your heart to speed up and also slow down at the same time, in those with heart issues, this can ultimately trigger a heart attack, leading to you to even drown in like a foot of water. Even in those who do not appear to have pre-existing issues, this can also still alarmingly lead to their end. Look up the blue hole in Oregon. Actually, go look up a video on Roanoke Tales about the blue hole in Oregon, where I discuss this. However, in those whose hearts have no issues, the gasping motion that you can do can inadvertently bring water in if you are below the water line, leading you to drown regardless. Moral of the story, enter cold water slowly. As painful as it is, if you're dead set on the task of doing so, you can survive it. It's just, you really gotta acclimate. Or just wait for summer again before entering the blob waters of Pennsylvania with your teen friends. So swimming out to the raft, nobody is adjusting to the water temperature, as they did not change in the slightest. They're still wearing sweaters, as Rachel then heads in. Laverne then takes the plunge next, as they left all the doors of the Camaro open. Don't worry about the battery draining at all. It's something of a myth after all. So as they keep swimming, a duck in the distance is getting totally lost in the sauce as it's quacking up. Before too long, it goes under as it wasn't able to fly away. See, if you saw this gross thing that was under it and you still decided it was time to just vibe out there and then saw a duck go under because of it, yeah, no thanks. Lakes are creepy enough, and if I see something in the distance also taking out ducks, I'm going to assume it's just like a gator or something and get out. Quarterback then makes it to the raft first, as then Poncho, also known as Randy, gets on next. Rancho then looks out on the floating garbage patch, which I'm going to affectionately call France, as it approaches. Completely crashing out, Pandy then starts telling Rachel to hurry up and get on the raft. Pulling Rachel up, they are having issues as the thing keeps getting closer and closer. Rancho then tells Laverne to swim faster as the thing starts moving underneath the raft. They then start asking what the problem is as she keeps swimming. Brother, just tell her to go back to the shore, as France is approaching you with malicious intent. They pull her up just as France makes its move underneath the raft. Congratulations, you are now part of a full-blown siege. They then call Pondy crazy as he says he doesn't know what that thing is that's under them. QB says, it must be an oil slick. I don't really believe in them. So he literally says he doesn't believe in oil slicks, as in oil floating on top of the water. I want you to remember that they are in college. He's definitely there with a sports scholarship, because that doesn't even make sense. That's like not believing in air. He only believes in what he can smell, taste, and touch. So really, air is out. But ironically, that means oil slicks are back in, as you could do all those things. It's not advised, but you can. So lining up the devil's lettuce once more, Randy then says it looks like it was going after the girls. He also realizes nobody knows where they are. Really? Nobody? No parents? No other friends? Nobody mentioned anything to the entirety of the student body? Aren't you guys still like at that age where you'd occasionally mention something to anyone? I don't know, maybe that's just me. Like even if I go anywhere, I still text my parents like, hey, if I go missing, this was my last location. So this was the 80s. I guess you just aren't going to text anybody, but anyways, it really doesn't matter. So that thing keeps congealing under the water as Rachel then changes into her bathing suit. She was wearing that the whole time, but decided to swim in her clothes, meaning that even if France wasn't currently under them, they would still have to ride back in freezing cold, wet clothes. 9,000 IQ play. Look, all I'm saying is, it may have just been smarter to do that prior to jumping in, Then again, what do I know? So Pando keeps crashing out about how it's an oil slick and he helped clean up one on the coast, but then he says that was an accident though. This one looks like it was on purpose. Well, that's a pretty bold statement. What makes you think it was on purpose exactly? QB says, no matter how hard he tries, he just can't get worried about the oil slick currently hanging out underneath the raft that is very clearly staying near them and also had to move to get under them in the first place. That wouldn't be concerning. So Rachel decides she has a brilliant plan. Apart from wearing her sweater in the water that she's gonna have to drive back in a cold car in, she's going to go stroke the mysterious substance that could contain, for all intents and purposes, acidic or carcinogenic materials. Hell, it could be Agent Orange chemical dump for all she knows. The hubris of youth. Deciding that this is the best course of action as she reaches out with her finger to poke it. Hopefully I have given the viewers of this channel enough information that it's your God-given right. In case you are new here, never use your hand. Always poke it with a stick, and if a stick isn't available, don't poke it at all. Latching onto her, it immediately starts melting her arm. Falling in because her arm is being melted, Laverne then laughs at her, as then she emerges screaming about how it hurts. Probably because they hadn't realized what was going on with her at this point, and having to see with their own eyes that her meat suit is in fact melting. QB then holds back Rando over here from jumping in because, good lord, no thank thinks. QB actually assesses the situation quite well, saying she's already dead, there's no point in jumping in. Actually, he was a bro on that one. Randy then throws up as France begins floating away, satiated for the moment. QB begins asking what that thing even is, questioning how it could have done that so quickly. QB then grabs Laverne because she's crashing out, becoming very unbro at record speed, threatening her as then she asks if they can just outswim it. They discuss if it's still hungry or maybe it's full now. QB devises a plan to wait for it to go away. Rando then says it smelled them, but it only showed up when they showed up. Confined to the raft, things aren't looking so great, which I still feel like you could probably outswim it. And watching it for longer, QB says over and over again, what is it, what is it? Now, I don't know, probably something that's responding to your vibrations of you asking what it is. So France then heads under the raft at this point as Laverne says, oh my God, where did it go? Like, how did you not see it? Why are you asking this? So clearly being the brains of the operation, QB states, he's going to make a swim for it. He's the fastest and can make it. Very unlikely, although I think I can make it, but you should give it a shot, brother. Laverne doesn't want him to go because she doesn't want to be left behind, but clearly, if you want to be rescued, someone is going to have to make a break for it. And this literally is the crab bucket theory. What's that, I can hear you saying? Well, if you put a bunch of crabs in a bucket, they will actually pull down any other crab that tries to escape, so you never really have to worry about any of them escaping. It's kind of strange. So in their back and forth, France is feeling the vibrations in the water and is still under the raft as it sends a few tendrils up, wrapping around QB's leg. No, he could have gone pro if it wasn't for his dissolved leg. So in a great amount of pain, it begins pulling him through the raft as Randy can't hang on. Granted, it really doesn't look like he tried that hard as QB's whole leg is pulled in and France keeps feeling in between the cracks. Phrasing on that one. Reaching out, QB's other leg is then broken as he's pulled through and eaten by the creature, leaving just Randy and Laverne. Bummer, dude. So looking around, Laverne now jumps on Randy as she's choking him out, and he says if you step on the planks, it can't get you. So that's apparently where you need to step. Setting her down, he now gets some oxygen to his brain as she is totally lost in the sauce, and he tells her to stay still so the creature thinks they aren't there. I mean, after all, it's very likely just reacting to the vibrations that you are putting out. So some more time passes with the creature just off to the side of the raft as Pancho then says he's tired and needs to sit. So he's like, hey Laverne, can you take a shift watching? And she's like, no, I can't. Sister, this is an all hands on deck situation. You need to take a watch or just sit and watch the creature. You don't have to stand. It's always an option. He then tells her to keep her feet on the boards and watch the shore for any lights or anything that might help them get rescued. So now that we have seen this creature, let's establish what we do know. First off, this creature is predatory for the most part. It is able to attack animals and dissolve them quite easily and quickly, which means it is extracting nutrients from them. However, there are some glaring problems with this creature under normal situations, but I think I can probably explain them. So where did this creature come from being the largest thing that needs to be explained? I believe based on the context clues we have seen, this is actually the simplest thing to do, or at least sort of shed light on. When we look at this creature, there are several things that are quite apparent. It is not an animal from what we can tell. It's not really a plant, but it also doesn't really appear to be a fungi either. Now, there has been a suggestion that possibly it could be an algal bloom of sorts or an oil slick from Randy, but I sort of doubt both. If we look at the surrounding area, it's quite clear that this is a desert, and on top of this, the original kind of takes place in Pennsylvania, which is going to be in colder water. So while colder waters can definitely have algal blooms, it's less common. And in a landlocked location, it's even more less common. Probably a better way to say that somewhat, but who knows? So while not impossible, a desert definitely is going to make the possibility even more significantly difficult unless it was intentionally seeded with some sort of algae. Because of this, I would have to assume it is likely not algae. When we look at it, it appears slick and is multicoloring, almost like there's an oily sheen on top of it. As made mention by Rancho, it kind of looks like an oil slick. This would seem to suggest to me that this is actually a bacteria of sorts. But not only that, this is what's known as a biofilm. I know, right? 2 videos with biofilms, one after the other. What are the odds of that? Also, before moving on to the biofilms, it's kind of important to understand that there is a possibility, we take oil, for instance. There's this concept that it comes from dinosaurs, but the reality is we don't really 100% know where oil's coming from. And considering all the life that we have found below the surface, it is just as possible that there could be bacteria that is producing oil, which interestingly would help to explain. I don't know how true this is. It's just what I've read, but evidently we've gone back to depleted oil sections that we've already long since have dried up essentially, and we've actually found that there was more oil there. Now, again, I don't work with oil. I'm not a petroleum-based scientist, so it is possible that my information there is incorrect. But if oil is actually being produced by microbes, then that might be an interesting thing, as then we wouldn't really run out of oil as quickly as we might think we will. But we also, again, don't know if it's completely just dinosaurs that have created oil. Either way, moving back to the task at hand, because of the biofilm production and the ability to break down flesh so easily, I believe it happens like this. At some point, given that this appears to be a somewhat mountainous area, a fissure may have opened up of sorts from under the ground, and this could have just been due to like tectonic shifts or some sort of earthquake. Given what we know about the amount of single-celled life under the ground and the amount in the water, such as with groundwater, it's clear a bacteria that can create biofilm is actually living within here. I know what you're thinking. Bacteria? Really? That's lame. Except it's not. Don't be a nerd. Bacteria are more than just annoying things that you get in your cuts that cause infection. Deep within the earth and even on surfaces, a fairly common event that takes place is something that is known as bioweathering. Bioweathering is when bacteria on rocks quite literally breaks down the material in order to extract nutrients such as iron and magnesium. So, how is this possible? When this bacteria attaches to the rock, it will release acids. Now, what sort of acids are you thinking of? Probably like acetic acid, or at most, possibly a citric acid, maybe a lactic acid thrown in there? None of these. Well, it does. Some of these release it, yes, but these bad boys are literally dropping sulfuric acid onto rocks, melting them down and stealing nutrients. Well, stealing is kind of a personification. They're just extracting nutrients. We can assume, given the lack of complex life within the planet that we know of, that bacteria is still existing down there to hunt down nutrition, but it's made even easier by the fact that they can break down rocks with sulfuric acid, so food is essentially all around them. The bacteria I have in mind is most likely the subterranean form of Thiobacillus thiooxidans, which is a chemolithotroph utilizing sulfide and thiosulfate as an energy source to produce sulfuric acid. Thiobacillus is also known to kind of form biofilms quite readily within groundwater, where the sulfur cycle is quite prevalent. Having been released from the ground, a piece of this biofilm broke off and ended up floating up to the surface. Its method of movement, which is already known in Thiobacillus, is going to be a single polar flagellum used with its motility, or used basically in motilization of its cell. Whereas one wouldn't really be a problem on your skin, it might just burn a little bit. It's clear this biofilm is going to be all working together fairly harmoniously in order to survive, which has all the flagella moving in the same direction, propelling it along, even when it appears as though there is really no method of locomotion. Also, for this level of, I guess, cooperation amongst the cells, you have to ask the same question I always ask. If you take one singular neuron from a human brain, does that neuron think? Likely not. Probably, no, it doesn't, to be honest with you. You need a ton of neurons connected in order to kind of form, I guess, sapient thought like we have, which is always interesting because at what point do you become sapient versus not sapient? And even then, if you really want to get into the question of consciousness, this is basically, I talk about this with my friends a lot, usually when we've had a little bit too much, but the point is that at what point is a thought actually triggered to become a thought, and how would a single neuron in conjunction with that thought know to start firing to create the thought? This idea kind of starts sectioning away consciousness under that our brains are more of just a conduit for consciousness as opposed to our brains themselves being conscious, which is an interesting thought, because how would my brain even know how to come up with that thought initially to even convey that to you? How does your brain know now to think about that? It's very interesting because we aren't really sure what consciousness is or how many cells even need to work together to create sapience, but it's clear with this biofilm, specifically relating it back to this movie, or at least a short story, that enough of these bacteria working together has created some form of sentience, allowing them all to work in this harmonious effort, I guess you could say, almost making them like a multicellular organism, like a true multicellular organism, rather than a colony of single-celled organisms. Anyhow, so as an animal or human comes into contact with it, it appears the colony goes beyond just existing together and instead can reach out and touch faith, so to speak, dragging prey in. Now, we don't really see this in standard bacteria colonies. They spread, but not like this. And this seems to suggest, possibly due to the bacteria working together, a potential sentience has formed, allowing for it to actually become predatory. Of course, we don't just see this in predators. You can take vines, for instance, with plants. Naturally, they will reach out for things to grasp onto in order to spread further. The Thiobacillus is no different. Coming into contact with flesh, it will reach out further in order to find more to consume. So releasing sulfuric acid onto the appendage, in this case the arm or even the entire body if you fall in by accident, sulfuric acid is actually known to almost immediately break down skin. It is quite likely that this biofilm is releasing digestive enzymes beyond just acids as well, leading to a rapid dissolving of the person. What's horrific is this is actually something that could be fairly possible given the right circumstances, although it's highly unlikely it would behave intelligently, actually hunting, people in general. However, if a biofilm existed of this size and complexity, and then you stepped into it shoeless with it releasing sulfuric acid, you could definitely incur damage. The problem is you're probably just getting out of it. Now, the other biggest problem is how adhesive is it actually going to be? Many bacteria release adhesive materials in order to actually stick to any surfaces that they come across. They produce a protein that can help them stick, like pili or imsgrams. And what are imsgrams? I can hear you saying. All right, prepare yourself. Microbial surface components recognizing adhesive matrix molecules, basically proteins that just help them stick. It's clear the bacteria can do these three things. A, reach out searching for nutrients. 2, forming an adhesive bond with the skin once it has connected before completely wrapping the limb or body. And then D, releasing the sulfuric acid onto the tissue, rapidly breaking it down. The biofilm also serves to limit water from getting in, diluting the effects of the sulfuric acid. Again, all of these things already exist in bacteria that we know, and the major delineating factor, though, is going to be intentional hunting. For one reason or another, this colony has the ability to sense vibrations in the water, indicating there is prey nearby. All that talking on the raft creates a ton of vibrations as well as moving. It is unlikely the blob is thinking, it is just reacting to movement in the water. As a result, if you would sit down and probably shut up for an extended period of time, it is quite likely it would move on as it cannot see you. It can only sense you through the vibrations. Once it is on the other side of the pond, just jump in and swim for it. It is likely you could outpace it. But anyways, back to the movie. Both of them are cold as it's October in the desert, as they have no idea what they're going to do to survive this. Probably not. Sitting down, Randio then says their only option is to just wait. As it keeps floating there menacingly, they are quite chilly. Laverne then wakes up screaming, alerting the thing once more that they are still there, as Pancho then says, "It was just a loon." They are freezing and numb, which then they add a blue filter and crickets, so I guess it's supposed to be evening. Also, it was just a loon. I'm pretty sure loons are way far north. They're not in the Southwest, I don't imagine. Anyways, so deciding to watch the thing together and snuggle for warmth, it is now evidently the next day as they have fallen asleep. The Camaro still plays music because it's on the shore. It could be that the creature ignores it though. Given enough time though, it may kind of go for it, at least check on it, giving you a chance to swim the other direction. Also, as if almost divinely, the battery has not died yet, which is the most unbelievable part of this episode. So Randy looks at the garbage patch as Laverne is still asleep. So he starts making moves on her because that's the important thing to do at this point in time, as then he lays her down. "The slats, you fool!" And I need to emphasize, slats! Making another move on her, good lord man, there's a flesh-eating France patch out there. Pulling up her shirt, her face is on the slat as the raft is definitely just above this thing, which all of this has to be blurred. Randy here decides to act really weird as then she wakes up to her face having been slightly melted because Randy was being Randy and he's stupid. Way to go, Randall. So she's covered in black goo now as it considerably spreads and then she's pulled off the raft, which in the book actually, he kicks her off the raft in a panic. Pretty messed up. The Camaro then calls to Randy as she's dragged into the water and now's his chance to escape. Beginning his swim, Laverne is already melted and it now becomes, can you outswim France? As it moves towards him, I kind of feel like you definitely could outswim this thing. Maybe it's just my bravado. I'd definitely be getting melted. Although, it does start to speed up a little and he's almost there. Getting out of the water, he then makes it to the shore as the garbage patch approaches the shoreline. Like a complete idiot, he then yells about how he beat the creature, gloating at the height of his accomplishment. He's standing right there on the shore. Brother, run. Or at minimum, just roll away from do something. Don't stand there. Instead, not listening to me because I'm a YouTuber roughly 40 years in the future, it does a wave function and then completely engulfs him. Fully digesting him in moments because once sulfuric acid hits your brain, it's pretty much lights out. The creature then returns to the water as we pan over to the Camaro with the battery still going. And now, someone can get a really good deal on a classic come next year when everyone returns back to the lake. So as we move through the plants though, an overgrown sign says no swimming, and thus concludes the raft. From what I can tell, this is a Theobacillus, which typically engages in bioweathering of rocks, utilizing a small amount of sulfuric acid to break down harder substances. Possibly having been released from the groundwater, it would move up to the surface of the water, where it would now begin eating animals for nutrients as well. As it did, it would grow and likely get better at it. Eventually coming across humans, it was a fairly easy task because everyone forgot to bring their brains with them, and now their brains are just melted soup. Moral of the story, if you see this thing floating in the water, just don't get in the water. It's that simple. But anyhow, I want to hear what you guys think. How easily could you have survived this thing? Correct. The answer is very easily. But let me know down in the comments. If you enjoyed it, leave a like, would be great of you, as it helps get the video out there. And subscribing is baller as well. I'll drop my Twitter, Discord, Patreon, Roanoke Tales, and Games link in the description. But speaking of patrons, I'd like to thank mine real quick. First, I'd like to thank our astronauts, Army and Tristan Kessick. Thank you guys for your awesome support. Next, I'd like to thank our astrophysicist, Death Dancer, and Feather. Thank you guys as well. And to my scientists, Dakota23, Invictus Echo, Metric System, Official Texan, Stutz, and the victorious return of Chad the Enjoyer's scientific explanations of B-grade horror movies, and this one was B-grade to the max. I do appreciate y'all's support, and the rest of my patrons. You guys are ballers as well. Keeps everything running smoothly, so thank you. But all right, that's gonna do it for me. I hope everyone enjoyed, and we'll see y'all in the next one.